Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome. A very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you are. At GMATWhiz, we always are excited to bring you amazing success stories. And today's success story is really incredible. This is something which really touched my heart because just a couple of weeks back, we had an interview with Riya. Some of you might have attended it. This success story is from that interview. Rajat was someone who was sitting in the audience, just like you are today, waiting to hear his journey about his secrets that took him to an amazing improvement of 70 points in less than 50 hours of effort. Okay, many people think it's impossible. Many people think, is it even doable or not? Rajat made it happen. So just 2 weeks back, he was thinking, like, my test is on 9th of September. Am I going to get there? What do I do? What should I do? And he is here with us. So if you are watching this debrief, who knows, like after 2 weeks, you could be sitting across the table, just like Rajat. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Rajat to share his insights and amazing tips on how he actually got to that incredible improvement. So warm welcome, Rajat. How does it feel to kind of achieve that landmark, which many people think is unthinkable, unbelievable, impossible?
Well, firstly, thanks for the introduction, Piyush. I definitely could not have done it without you. And I'll be honest, the first thing I have is relief, to be done with this process. It was 3 long months of studying and getting there, so it feels good to be across the line. And yeah, it's getting a good score is really important for a lot of us who are looking to apply for an MBA. So making sure that you're one step done is always a good feeling. So yeah.
And I still remember our first chat. We discussed, I think we had our first discussion on 28th of August. 26th is when we interviewed Riya.
Yeah.
28th in that time, I think we discussed for the first time. And I was asking Rajat, like, what timeline do you have? And he said, I have to take the GMAT on 9th. And I was like, why is 9th important? He said, Piyush, you know what? ISB's deadline is on 15th. I would want to apply in round one, so I really want to get it done by that date. And we literally calculated the number of days. So Rajat is a working professional in the States, and we literally had 48 or 49 hours of prep time, including the
Yeah.
weekends and
It was
whatnot
tight. It
to
was tight.
prepare for. It was super tight, and we're like, what should we do? And it required a very focused approach because we didn't have the time to do everything in the world out there to kind of get to the score. But yeah, everything like turned out really well. Amazing work from Rajat. The self belief that he had, the perseverance that we had, really mattered because a lot of people will probably think like the countdown will start ticking in their mind: 12 days, 11 days, 9 days, 9 days. But he didn't panic. That, I think, that is the most critical thing which I felt. But yeah, it's not my not my show today. It's Rajat. So Rajat, tell us about your journey on GMAT. Just a quick intro about when it started, how it started, what have you did. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was actually I had decided to take the GMAT. I wanted to apply to ISB and possibly some other schools. I had taken the test before this, so I had two attempts actually. So studied for around 1 month, 4 to 5 weeks before my first attempt, and
Mhm.
I had that didn't go too well, and I also wasn't super prepared then. Then kind of took another 2 weeks scheduled test number two, where I was consistently by test one I'd started doing okay on my mocks. I was at a okay point, which I thought, but then another 2 weeks of studying where mocks were good, but even test two didn't end up doing well. I actually did worse than I did on test one, and so I was
Okay.
kind of really a little disheartened because I put in 6 to 8 weeks now almost of work, and right after test two when I got my score, I knew that even though I put in the work and I was my base was probably okay, but there was something missing. I felt that there was something missing. I needed to take my third attempt before the 15th, ninth being kind of the only day, ninth and 10th possibly even, literally back to back. So I knew that I was missing something, and which is why when I was on the, literally Googling what, GMAT strategy is this and that, that's how I landed up on the GMATWhiz page where when Riya had an interview, and kind of the interview really resonated with me. and Piyush's demeanor and Riya and the belief they had in each other and just the camaraderie that came out of it sort of made me think that, maybe this is something I need that to push me across the line. Piyush and I worked together over the period of time that he mentioned to really hone down on kind of where I could improve on my strategy. I also worked on verbal with Sunita ma'am along the same lines, and just focused work over those 12, 13 days were then able to get me across the line, get a 665. So I know we've got quite a few details gonna come up, but that's the summary, guys. And yeah, absolutely, it's been a fun journey, and I think we can get into
Yeah.
details, but that's the summary of it.
You know what? That's the trademark of a great player. Like he makes things look so easy, right? So Rajat just made things look so easy, and trust me, like I know when we were having that call, like what kind of thoughts I was having in my mind. Like 50 hours is what we have. What can we do around this time? But yeah, really great work done. So let's get into the main part. And guys, again, it's not about me and Rajat, it's about you. So feel free to ask any questions. You are the one who are going to drive this interview. I'm just going to cover a few areas today. So, at a very high level, I'll just show the structure, the way we have planned it. So, I feel that one of the biggest thing, if you really are looking at this quicker score improvement, is that root cause analysis. Because honestly, when you have just 50 hours and like you're looking at a jump of 70 plus points, you cannot do everything in the world. You have to do a very focused effort. You don't even have to time to even go through all the data and all the error logs and everything. It's very important that you identify the right root cause and plan according to that. And then we will talk about the quant, DI, and verbal score improvement, and then we'll talk about the pacing strategy, which is so stay with us till the end because I feel out of the 70-point improvement, at least 30 points has to be contributed to the last aspect, or even more. Who knows? So Rajat has some amazing tips on how to go about the pacing, and I really, in a way, envy him for the kind of composure he keeps during the test and he built up. So we'll definitely talk about that towards the end. So let's get started with the root cause analysis. And I thought I'll just, again, this is the score jump we had from 595 to 665, which was a 24 percentile jump in that period. I literally thought of just taking down some notes. Like, this is the very first session that we had on the 29th of September. And this is literally my notes in my notebook that I kept around. What is that we need to work on? So, again, we'll talk more about this. I'll hand it over to Rajat. So, Rajat, uh, take us through what was the root cause analysis. What did you realize as the gaps that you have, and how, like, and then obviously we'll talk about how to fix them. But yeah, what were the gaps that you realized after the first discussion?
Yeah, I think, if we speak primarily about quant right now, what I realized is, though I was doing well in my mocks, I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to. I was kind of stuck at the 80-81 barrier, where that's under 80th percentile. And while I was doing better in DI and verbal, even in my mocks, I sort of felt that my quant needed a little more work. I wanted to, really push that. And, obviously, having been out of school for 5 years, I wasn't as used to, solving problems very often. And it had been, some of the math that's on here is kind of more high school math. It's not, college level math where you're doing little different things there. So, I mean, out of high school, it's been 10 years for me. So, just kind of getting back in the groove, I could improve on my foundations a little bit more. Obviously, that problem solving ability was there, but there was some areas I obviously felt that we I could get better in my approach and just on the foundations. And as Piyush pointed out, there were a couple of areas we identified, and just really, solving those problems, seeing where there could be a gap in my, foundational knowledge, or maybe how I'm approaching those questions. That was what the quant strategy was about. Is obviously, in 12 days you can't really drastically change
Hmm.
it, but you can improve on what you already know and add on to that, right? Your smart strategies. Instead of spending 5 minutes solving a question, can you solve it in 2 minutes, which is kind of the benchmark for your GMAT questions, right? Is you might know how to solve it in a certain way, but but can you do it better? And that's what I think Piyush and I really worked on, is that strategy, as well as then your foundational knowledge on a couple of areas where I think I had not worked as much. Because when you do your mocks, when you do your questions, it's a different atmosphere. But test day, when you're doing one question after the other, even if there is a little bit of gap in your foundation, that can then amplify during
That
test.
shows up. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. That adds up to the pressure as well, and then all things goes up.
Yeah.
So, and one very very important thing that Rajat just pointed out is that if you are looking at that short a turnaround time, please understand you cannot change your method significantly. Like in fact, when we were on the in our first call, like even before we started doing our prep on 28, we discussed this. With we don't want to play with the methods a lot. Like there were times when, as a teacher, I was like, Rajat, you know what? You need to do this question in this way. And then I had to also be reminded of the fact that, okay, keep myself reminded of the fact that we just have those 12 days, those 50 hours of effort, and I should not push him too much, because what is more important is to get across the line. So whether he uses this process or that process, more important is to be smart, to be aware of the question, what the question is really asking, and act on it. So I'll quickly just summarize, Rajat, in a minute, like the three things that we talked about through this slide. So first thing that we focused on was the strategic process of solving questions. Because see, as an expert, it's important for me to guide Rajat as to what can get the highest result, like the best result possible in the shortest possible time. So we cannot change the approach for all type of questions. Individual topic based approaches I'm talking about, like, okay, let's not solve inequalities like this, let's solve it like that. No, first thing we have to correct is the overall methodology, like how do you approach questions, the strategy of solving questions. So I'll get deeper into this, but one thing which I saw was that Rajat was reading fast, and very fast in some cases, which was working with for him for algebra and number properties, but not working in word problems. Because if you miss a small word in a word problem question, you might as well get the entire question wrong. So it was very, very critical to learn how to read fast and read slow. Not just read slow, read fast and read slow. And how do you go about after reading? Like, how do you go about solving the question? That's one thing that we identified has to be worked upon. He had a very good understanding of the number properties topic. Like he understood what remainders are, what LCM GCD is, but that clarity in the approach, like I know this formula, I know this concept, but how do I really apply it on a GMAT question? Do I plug numbers? Do I actually use a mathematical approach? In which case do I do what? Is something which was something I felt was missing. So in fact, out of the work that we did, almost 50% of the work in quant was done on number properties alone. And that kind of showed up in the actual test as well. And then for data insights, we saw that data sufficiencies where, like, when we looked at the data that was doing on the quizzes, a lot of questions was falling for the C trap. So we identified what is the possible reason for that, because there is sometimes information which is there in the question stem which was not being thoroughly analyzed, and that was leading to C trap. So the importance of analyzing the question stem even before you kind of read and go about the individual arguments is the statements is something which was very critical. So let's run the users through the quant journey. So let's talk about that strategic process review that we were talking about. Like, how did you change the approach? What was the change, and how did you go about doing it?
Yeah. As Piyush pointed out, right, I had, and I probably still do have a tendency to read really fast through the question, because again, this is a timed exam where every second counts. So I had this, going through the question very quickly, maybe, and that really, and even in verbal, which we'll get to later, that is a very tough thing that you don't realize you're doing it. But on while working with Piyush, I realized that was causing quite a few mistakes on my end, right? If you don't read a part of this question, even one word can really make a difference. So kind of reading fast and reading slow, making sure those 5 seconds extra that you might spend reading the question stem will be a lot more important, rather than spending 5 more seconds on the strategy. And yeah, once you read through the question as well, is to strategize rather than going directly into solving mode. Strategize, how are you going to solve this problem? Is there a better method of doing it? So that strategy, the reading and strategizing, is very important. And that's something I was lacking prior to working with Piyush. Is I was jumping into the questions, and just solving them immediately. So even that slight change in approach was what really helped me. And then yeah, as we spoke about the number properties and in DI, what you do is, if your understanding of a certain topic is not really 100% clear, even though you might know the basics, your hard questions you'll struggle. And really working on those weak areas or areas of opportunity is what helped. Number properties, it's been years since remainder and LCM, GCD, like, these are properties that are basic. We've known them since fourth standard, but really applying and understanding what they are, because the GMAT can trick you putting multiple things in one question, and then you're stuck. Is this LCM, GCD? Is this remainder? Is this odd even? All of those things on test
Yes.
day can really get you. So having a clear understanding of which question has what is the real question being asked and what is the foundational property needed to solve this was another important aspect in my improvement. um like cover it all, Piyush? Anything else
Yeah,
on
I
this one?
think I think just take, like, I was just thinking, like, you talked about strategizing again.
Yeah,
I know as a student, like, now that you have done it, you know how to do it. But as a
yeah,
student, there would be many people, many viewers who would have this question in mind. I do strategize. Yes, I do think how to solve the question. So can you give us an example of what does that strategizing actually mean before and after in this period that happened?
yeah. I mean, let's take a kind of an algebra question, right? One, when you get like a square minus b square, and then a square minus b square is a plus b into a minus b. And the way, again, you see that, you start solving, and then you're like, you start solving, and maybe somewhere you'll get caught because that was not what was really being asked. They're actually asking something else here. And if you just see that and you're like, oh, this is what it is, without thinking, you go into it, you might realize, what, this wasn't an a square minus b square uh, sort of question. There's something else to be done here. It is actually, it's an odd even, or maybe it's a double. You use multiple properties. You shouldn't be using a square minus b square, because on the right hand side there is something else. If you can bring your RHS into your LHS, it's actually a much easier equation to solve. So rushing into that, oh, I saw my a square minus b square, let's just start on it, and this should be it. This isn't our 10th grade where, that's it. You see one and you go and apply. This is
You
a
apply that
tough
problem.
test. So it requires multiple levels of work, and just kind of taking that step back and looking at the problem thoroughly is important. And then yeah, knowing your skills, right? The GMAT, we need the tools to crack the GMAT. Building on your tools, knowing what tools you have at your disposal, right? Work problems, I was struggling with work problems, even though, to be honest, they are simple, right? It's a simple formula. It's one formula. Work is equal to rate into time. That's all the whole thing is. If you solved enough of those questions, if you know what the approach is, instead of struggling, I realized that that was actually my strength, because it's one formula that you need to know how to apply. So working through those questions quite a few times, knowing what what you should do, what you shouldn't do, is very important. And again, really working on those items is what will then on test day be your friend rather than be your enemy.
And that's very very important, because when I remember when I was looking at your previous scorecards and all, what I also saw was even the quizzes that, like, before our session I asked you to do some of the quizzes on the platform. So what I was seeing was that Rajat is able to do most of the questions within the 2 minute time frame. Like, he was able to do 1.5 minutes, 1 1 45 very comfortably. But there were a few questions, like in the test, maybe about 4 or 5 of them, where he'll get stuck. Like, he might spend like 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes. Again, I'm not saying that's completely unnatural. Obviously, if there's a very hard question from out of your comfort area, you can do that. But what was showing up also was that in some of the questions which were in his comfort zone, also that thing was happening. So what happens, because of not strategizing, is, as Rajat was saying, if you go on the wrong track or you go in the wrong direction, you don't just end up wasting your time on that question. You might as well get it wrong, and you are left with less time, which might make you feel rushed. So if you are feeling this timing pressure, that, you know what, I'm not able to complete my test on time, go back and identify the root cause. Don't just start what happens is people start doing counterproductive action. They start rushing through the question instead of strategizing, and that's the root cause why you were not able to complete the test on time. So identify what's stopping you, and that is something which is very critical. So I'll just quickly, Rajat, I'll run through the small like flow chart for just the users to kind of be able to relate to that. So it's very important that you go through the given information in the question stem and draw the right inferences. So simplify the information. Sometimes they will give you complex pieces of information which needs to be simplified first. And then you strategize before you actually jump into solving. So solving is the last step. There are these three more steps that need to happen before you get to that. So that is something which all of you need to do. So now let's talk about the verbal improvement. We've talked a lot about quant. So what changed in verbal? You had a 4 point jump in quant as well as verbal. So let's talk about the verbal score improvement.
Yeah, similar, right? Similar on verbal is that, you know, verbal I've always counted as my strong strength. Back from my school days, I've been good at verbal in language. And I was, again, mocks was, I actually got 84 on my first mock, first or second mock, you
Oh,
know,
that's
and I
great.
was like, yeah, I'm doing well. I don't really need to work too much on this. My quant is low, so let's spend as much time as I can on quant. Verbal, I'm already doing good, but the same problem came in verbal, right? If in the test there are tougher questions, you have a time restriction. Those things, if you're if you're reading too quickly through the stem, I realized, and ma'am pointed this out to me, is that I'm not spending as much time on your reading comprehension prompts. I'm going through them too quickly, and then what I was doing was I was spending too much time trying to match one of the answer options back to the thing rather than just reading the whole passage properly. And that is what we worked on. And again, working with ma'am, working with Piyush, we were able to identify real time what that problem is, because what we did is we worked on how I was thinking, right? Is they said solve the problem, Rajat, but tell me what you're thinking. And while I did that, we realized that I'm going through the question stem too quickly, even in verbal. And we really dialed down in those 12 days on making sure that I'm spending enough time reading through the prompt properly. And then instead of trying to match my answer options to the question, you will then immediately actually know if you've understood the passage properly. The time then required to solve the question goes down by more than half of what you were doing before, because now you're not matching answer options to the question. And again, I didn't even realize that I was doing that I was kind of using the see what answer just makes more sense rather than thoroughly understanding the passage. So that was one big area of improvement. And that then on test day, it's absolutely essential, because you have I think, and personally, I don't know if Piyush would agree, I think he would, because he said this to me, is that the mocks and the tests do have a little bit of a gap. The tests are slightly harder, I would say, than the mocks. And even though I was doing, 83, 84 on my mock 5 weeks prior to actually getting the 85 on the official, that difference between the mock and the official in some of these areas, and especially with the harder questions, get you. And having a solid strategy reading through, that's for RC and for your reading. And then for critical reasoning, I
So
think.
I'll just stop on that
Yeah,
RC part. Just one follow up question on that, Rajat. So
yeah,
you had just 12 days time, okay, and then
yeah,
ma'am was telling you that you need to invest top heavy. You need to invest time on, let's say, reading the passage more. Didn't it strike you that how can I do that? Like this is a like this strategy. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna fall behind time. So didn't it strike you? Because I hear these questions a lot of time from my students who speak to
hmm,
me that Piyush, I know this is the reading style that is being advocated by a lot of experts, but
yeah.
I'm already falling short of time. Isn't that going to be counterproductive for me? So didn't it strike? Like, didn't you feel
It
that
did.
when you're
The
doing it?
thought obviously entered my mind, but you have to trust yourself and your teacher in this as well. Is that you might have grand ideas about your abilities, or also of, yeah, timing. These are just things we bring in to the equation. I realized after applying the strategy that, hey, even though it seems counterproductive, it isn't, right? You have to have the belief that if someone whose experience is telling you that this is something to do, try it. If you try it and then you still don't, then maybe it's actually a different cause. Maybe the issue is different. But when I tried that, I immediately started, like, just literally day one, I forced myself to read the question stem better, spend more time on it, and immediately I saw that improvement. And then it's trusting in yourself that, hey, once, if this is the problem, if this is the problem that I've identified, if I work on it, it'll go away. The timing, whatever you're thinking about, you have to have that belief, I think, in yourself, in your mentor, and in the process, right? It's a process that's being advocated to you because of its merits. So it's belief in all three. And yeah, that's kind of what
That belief is important. Like I like there are many times people come to me and ask me this question, Piyush. I really like this. Like I really like to see the amazing stories that you bring to the table. I really want to be one of those. But do you really think it can happen? And in what scenario it can't? And one reason why I tell them that it may still not work out as a success is when you don't believe your tutor. So it's very important that you trust in yourself, in the tutor, and the method. So yeah, if we fail, we fail. We'll have our learnings, but it's very important to have that belief in yourself. That's very, very critical. So Rajat, I'm gonna get a little go a little out of our like planning. I'll take up a few questions from
yeah,
the like comment like here
that's
for
good.
like students. So I'll take up a question from Rajkumar. Rajkumar is asking, how did you take the test in 12 days? There's a minimum 15-day gap. So Rajkumar, he didn't. No one can take a 12 test in 12 days. Like if someone says that he has taken a test in 12 days, then there's something wrong about it because GMAT doesn't allow. So if you read the title, like the headline of this YouTube video very clearly, it was 12 days with GMATWhiz that Rajat spent. We started on 29th of September, sorry, August, and we had the test date on 9th of September. So the improvement journey was around this time. Before that, it was like Rajat was studying on his own. So we were talking about that journey that we worked together, and that's what we are going to discuss today. So let's take up a question from Alicia. She's asking, how do you manage time in DI, especially in MSR? Like I want to use the word goat, but it is the most difficult question type in DI. So how do you manage time? Let's answer both the questions separately. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go on a slightly different route on this one, guys. I don't know if I should, but here the DI, and again, that's where your test taking strategy comes into place. How you order the sections that you're taking. DI is a long section, and Piyush did, and again, I realized that obviously through all the mocks that I've taken, that it takes longer to do DI. Even though there's only 20 questions, you take longer than your 23 question. Verbal has 23, but still you end up taking longer in DI. There's two things I realized. I'll give the answer for the question you're asking first, actually, and then I'll give you my take, slightly different one. One is, yes, it's sort of, again, it's the belief. It's not letting the pressure get to you. It's sort of, Piyush told me this thing that, Rajat, you're not going to solve all 20 of DI. You are aiming to solve 16 to 18 of those. You are not aiming to solve 20, because if you spend too much time on one, you might get it wrong, and then you will get multiple ones wrong after that as well. So again, it's the GMAT is a fine balance of your learnings and of test taking strategy. So sort of knowing that, hey, I'm not going to solve all 20, I'm going to probably only solve 18 or 16. So then you just knowing that, believe that, hey, I don't need 2 minutes 15 seconds for every question. I have 2 minutes 30 seconds for every question. Maybe I won't get to the last two, and especially that's when your test taking strategy. If you do your strongest to weakest, or possibly, I think Piyush might have some thoughts on that one. Is if you do DI as your last section, and you've already done well in verbal and quant, you don't you don't get penalized as much. And if you see my breakdown of my score, I got, I think, 7 or 8 wrong in DI, which was my last one. Yet I got a
7.
90th percentile. I was surprised myself. I was like, how did this happen? And that's where some of the GMAT tricks you in ways. So keeping some of those things in mind, which I might get to maybe later, Piyush can also speak about it. But yeah, the straighter answer to this question is just managing your time well, and not letting the pressure get to you. Using your 2 minutes 30 seconds, reading through the question prompt properly. When you read through the question prompt, you spend 3 4 minutes on the prompt, because you're going to get 3 questions for MSR, right? So technically, you've got your 7
It's
minutes
like an
for your,
RC basically.
yeah,
Yeah, in a sense.
it is an RC. You spend time on it, and then once you've properly understood it, you'll get you'll get your questions mostly right.
And what if you get a like crazy MSR again?
Then you leave
Like
it, then you mark it, you leave it, you move on, you solve the rest of the questions, and then you come back. You have your three, use your tools, right? Use the tools that you have three changes that you can do. Sometimes there are some that you might have like one easy question in the three, so you might not need to change all three. You might get one easy one, solve that one, just mark the rest, move on, and then come back to solve it if you have the time. Because it's not worth spending time getting it wrong and then getting the rest wrong. To solve the ones that are easier, and then possibly you come back if you get time, and
that
it
that's a
does
that's a very very important awareness that you need to have. I think great point, Rajat, that a lot of people don't even realize that is an option which they have. Like they know that's an option, but realizing that is an option is also a different story. Like you have to have that awareness in the test that I can come back if required.
yeah.
So again, I'm putting up Rishikesh's question, and Rishikesh is someone who started working with you, by the way, at the same time as he's
Okay.
also working with us right now. And he
Perfect.
has this question that how do you improve? Like I think we have talked about the other areas, but let's take up the TPA part, I guess. Yeah, how do we improve on the TPA part?
Yeah, I think there again, it's you have your I think TPS can be both verbal and quant, right? Or is it primarily quant? Both, right?
It is, yeah, it is mostly quant. Sometimes those CR questions also come, yeah. So
Yeah, it's I think there is again, it's treated, do not have a a fear of a TPA question. Just look at the question as it is. You know, you have a certain method of solving it. Just use that method. If your method of solving a quant question is sound, you'll get the right answer for a TPA. I know that having your multiple boxes to take and that just it brings that fear in you that, oh, you know, I have to solve two questions. It's not, it's just one question that you have to objectively solve. That's what I'd say. And I know that might not be the answer you're looking for, but
no,
it yeah.
I'll add just
And
one point to
Piyush
this,
can
and this
add
is
some to it. Yeah.
yeah. So this is one thing which I really liked about Rajat. In fact, uh, possibly wanted to get a short snip of one of our sessions where you really, while taking the test, like at one point of time, you'll really take a deep breath and you'll say, okay, let me now use my smart approaches to solve. So TPA is one of those places where you can't get to an answer. You can only get to a ratio, you can only get to an approximate idea. You need to find a relationship that works with that equation. So it's important that you are able to make that calculated, not, I won't use the word guesses, but those approximations to kind of understand which ones of the following you got. Because many times there are questions where you can't get to the exact answer. You have to identify which option fits. And Rajat's one of the biggest strengths. There were like two, three great strengths about him that I really enjoy, like liked working with, and also envied some of them. But yeah, so one of them was like he's very good at guessing. Like when it comes to that, like last moment, I reached to this point, but I'm not gonna just let my effort go waste by picking something else. You would take those 10 extra seconds, 15 extra seconds, use the logical understanding, and just mark an answer. And in most cases, that would turn out to be correct because there is that proper logical framework that is going on in the mind. So don't that is I think one of the very critical thing in TPA that you have to do. So possibly that comes naturally to Rajat because of that. But yes, you have to do that estimation in TPA. That's
Yeah, I think definitely that's a good point, Piyush, and thanks for reminding me. It is something that you have to do. You know, if you want to really make the most of your time, you again just taking your time, looking through the options. If you have your strategy, if you know the question well, you'll eliminate half of the options after looking at it. You know, we had our I think it was the number properties one, or inequalities, where all of the answers were within the threshold. One of the answers was in the threshold, and everyone else was greater. So you immediately then sort of know when you
yes.
read through the options that you're like, hey, this sort of makes sense. Because if you have an understanding, you don't need to really go solve that whole question. If you even see those options and you realize that, hey, four of those options out of five are outside the range and one is inside the range, and if you sort of understand that range, you then know that even though I'm not 100% sure if it's 5 or 6 or 7, as long as it's within your range, let's say it was 1 to 10 was your range, and all of the others are 11, 12, 15, and this is 5, even though you might not know that exactly the answer is 5, you'll get to it given that you have an understanding of it, and use your smart methods.
And that's what test day awareness is all about. So it's again, even I will go to the extent of saying that even if you know you can solve the question by putting in another minute, why do you want to put in that another minute? If you are aware that okay, I have reached till this point and I have these options in front of me, and you are aware that okay, I can actually now solve the question right away, I don't need to even go to the next step. That's what smartness is all about. And one very important disclaimer, not disclaimer, asterisk I'll put here: this strategy won't work for every one of you. Please understand that. If you are someone who is not good at observing those things, or you're not very aware of the question and that logical understanding does not exist, looking at the options beforehand or thinking about the options again and again could also interfere with your solving style. So this is not
Everyone has
something which
their
I recommend.
strengths and weaknesses. Yep, and you have to really
Yes, yes.
identify your strengths and weaknesses to crack the GMAT. You don't do something that someone else might be good at, right? And you have to play to your strengths. Rajat or Riya might be amazing at doing something. Rishikesh might be amazing at doing something else. Follow your what you're good at, and don't try and emulate someone else.
That's the best conclusion I could have said, right? Honestly, that's what you need to focus on. So obviously, you can come here, understand the key strategies, all of that, but don't copy paste things. As I said, understand where you're strong, where you're weak, and categorize them and act on that. And in case you need help with that, our team is happy to do that. Like you can feel free to schedule on my call on my calendar. It will be really tough to get the time around this time of the year. Like it's a crazy season going on, round one applications. In fact, last night, like for ISB, we were like sitting together, slogging to the last moment to kind of do our best forward for ISB and all. So it's a crazy season going on, but I'll try my best to connect. So if you want to work with us, we'll help you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are and to improve further. So feel free to connect with us, schedule a call. The link is in the comments as well as the description button below. So let's go to the next
What
question our
I'll
users
add
have.
one thing,
So
Piyush, in this. I'll add just one thing is if you guys are serious about taking the GMAT, you want a good score, don't wait for that last minute to do what I did in the sense, right? I only did it for 12 days. Who knows? Had I worked with Piyush for longer, I could have crossed the 700 barrier. I think,
I'm sure you would have.
absolutely. You don't, we've for working professionals who've been out of school for a while, it's tough to get back into the study mode. And however smart you are, having some help for folks who have now done this for years and helping you on your strategy, getting your things right, it goes a long way. One of the things that I mentioned to my colleagues, my family is, I wish I would have started studying with Piyush, with GMATWhiz, or with someone earlier than I did, because that would have really helped even more on really get your weak areas, strengthen your opportunities. So yeah, I mean, if you are where I was, it still works. It's a great thing that we managed to do in 12 days. But even longer term, I think it's something that everyone should consider, is kind of getting that help that you might not be able to do on your own.
Definitely,
And
definitely. If
Piyush,
you are not
Piyush
sure
and
what to
Ram are
do
both
next,
amazing at it. They have been great mentors and teachers, and I will absolutely recommend them. And they
thank you
didn't,
so much, Rajat.
neither
It
of them
was
told me to say this, by the way. Yeah, guys, it's not. This is all. I'm happy to be here because of the incredible work that we've done over the past 2 weeks, and I want you guys to really benefit from experiences such as mine.
thank you so much for that, Rajat. Let's take up the next question from Nandan. Again, this is possibly the like even in our discussion, this is the next point that I was coming to. So, what was your time management strategy in the mock set on the day of the test? Like, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So for what I said for DI, I think only applies to DI. For quant and verbal, you have to sort of. I mean, obviously, you get a really hard question, you are not going to be able to get it right. If you see a super tough quant that that, hey, I don't think I can do this, you mark it, you move on. If you get the time, you come back. But you sort of have to, for those, I didn't think about leaving any questions. For verbal, I knew that if I for verbal, I was never short on time. I never really, that sort of 2.5 minutes were always the thing, because if you've solved enough questions, you get into that rhythm of solving 23 questions in 45 minutes. So as long as you're not doing, it's getting into that rhythm, right? If you have a way of doing it and you've done it for weeks. I took 6 mocks uh, for the official. I think I took 9 mocks that were outside, and in the GMAT one, and in some others I think I took 15 mocks total. So by that time, after taking 15 mocks, you have your strategy, sort of your timing done, which is so
in place.
one of the things is just consistent effort of doing it, repeat, rinse and repeat. That helps you in your time management strategy. And mocks, right? Not just solving questions. Sometimes solving 23 questions still works, but taking those mocks is really important. And then two, I'd say, yeah, I didn't really have like a, oh, I'm going to leave one or two. It was more of a, I'm going to do my best. If I see something really difficult, I'll mark it, move on, and if I have time at the end, I'll come back. So spending time on the ones that you can solve, rather than wasting time on the ones that you might try to solve and still get wrong.
And in fact, that's one thing which I really like about Rajat. In fact, after like obviously like when you get success, it's very easy to tell others about it and others also value it more. But even before that, I really like this about Rajat, and now I'm telling this to every single student of mine, Rajat, almost everyone. Like even Rishikesh, I've told this about you. So one thing which I really like about him is he doesn't, like the last point that you see in green. He doesn't believe that the test is above yourself. Like he treats the test at the same level. Many people are so much give so much value to the test. They feel so pressured because of the test that they start over questioning themselves sometimes, over analyzing themselves, and that's when the trouble starts. Don't treat the test above you. It's just a test, and it's not even a test. It's a set of questions that you're solving. Correct? At the end of the day, it's one question at a time. It's a con question. It's a verbal question or a DI question. It's a question at the end of the day. There is an answer. When you attach emotions to it, when you say, okay, you know what, ISP deadline is just 6 days away. If I don't get this, I'm not gonna get a reply in round one.
You
That's not
cannot
the
do
questions you
that.
should answer.
I For me, I was not, when I was working with Piyush, the 12 days, 14, 16 days between test 2 and test 3, I was not thinking about, oh, I only have 16 days to go. Oh, I have only 5 days after that for my ISB deadline. If I let those pressures get to me, I would not be able to do that. For me, it was simple. Hey, I know I can do this. I've been doing well on my mocks. Something was going wrong in my test day strategy. Let's work on it. you know my test is on 9th of September. Every day, let's work on something. Let's get better. Let's keep solving, and not try and race against time. Just improve yourself every day. Learn, apply yourself, and that was it, what it was. So yeah, definitely, don't let the pressure of timing get to you. You can always, everyone a lot of people tell you this: what's the worst that will happen? No, maybe you'll go to apply in round 2 instead of round 1. Maybe you'll apply in round 3. You put in consistent effort, it will be worth it. And hey, again, you don't get it this time, keep working, I did it 3 times. I took 3 tests. Test 1, I did worse. Test 2, then test 1. I obviously, those things get to you. Oh shit, like, I've been studying 8 weeks. Why did my test score go worse? It's That's not what it is. It's not about you. Don't take it personally. Just think that, hey, something went wrong that day. It's fine. What is it? Can I identify it? Can I work on it? And then test 3, I was able to get the score I wanted, and it was just consistent effort.
And very rightly said, like the last thing that you mentioned, like to summarize that, what is important is to understand, can I identify what went wrong? That is more important. People stay keep that attachment that I did not do well. I've been studying for so long. Those questions are not gonna do you any good. Those questions are not having any answers. Like you need to ask questions which have real answers and are real problems. So identify what's not working for you. And just one more thing, Rajat, like in this 12 days, again, I'm sure someone is going to ask this question because this is a common question for many people, that in those 12 days or 16 days of before the last attempt, how many mocks did you take?
Just two mocks between the 12
Two
days, right?
mocks, right? So that's
Yeah,
in those last 12 days that we
yeah.
started working, right? Two
Two.
mocks, right? So a lot of people go overboard there as well. That they feel, okay, I just have the test coming in front of me. I should take a lot of mocks, 3, 4, 5. I need to fine tune my timing. I need to fine tune my pacing. But understand, it's not the mocks that will improve your score. Mocks only allow you to put everything on the table on one day to kind of perform. Just apply the strategies that you have learned. If your strategies are flawed in the beginning, no matter what you do, the mocks are not going to help you out.
Yeah. In the
So
12 days, I literally took the mock on day 11 and day 12. I 10 days I didn't take any mocks because I knew that I was now working on my strategy. I wanted to get the questions right. I wanted to build on my weaknesses. Again, a part of me did think, I'm like, what am I doing? I haven't taken a single mock in the past 10 days. No, if you improve on your approach, it will show up in your mock, in your official.
and just as another asterisk, I don't recommend taking mocks on the very last day. Rajat's case is very different.
Yeah.
Less time, and then he's very calm.
Second
He's
last.
cool as a cucumber.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still those days are like very like can make you nervous if you don't get the score. So again, knowing Rajat, I knew he'll handle pressure well. He will not get worried about the scores at all. So that's something which you need to ensure that you do right overall. So great tips, Rajat. Like any closing remarks, any closing comments from your side about like any other tips? We had a great discussion. You have shared a lot of amazing thoughts with the users. But anything else that you want to cover? Happy to go ahead, please.
I think just is kind of, to summarize it, I'd say, trust in yourself that, the test is just, you have to be calm. You have to know that if you've done the effort, you can really, you can do well. Having that belief really goes a long way because, even like even your verbal, right, it's so subjective. You could go wrong if you start second guessing yourself, if you start thinking about, hey, I need to get this score, oh, like this is my last attempt. No, don't let those thoughts come into your mind. Be calm. Just treat it as any other test. And yeah, you should, again, some slightly tangential on what we just talked about, but kind of really, which sections you take are, I think, is also important because it then affects the psyche of you taking the test. Strongest to weakest, I think, is what I was very comfortable with, because one, the test being adaptive, also it makes a difference, right? If you take your weakest first and you struggle for whatever reason, it can have a double effect. One, it can the adaptability will influence the test, where now you're not getting the tougher questions, so to raise the bar of your score, so that it'll affect it that way. And then in the second way, it was, you might be, you might get confused, you might be nervous for solving the remainder of the exam. So kind of strongest to weakest, or even, and possibly DI at the end, because you don't get penalized as much, is a strategy that is important. You can always work on your weaknesses, you can build on them, but your test day strategy is also equally important, of, pacing yourself, which sections you're taking. So it's the, getting doing well on the GMAT focus is a mixture of the two, and you have to pay equal attention to both.
Thank you
And
so
yeah,
much.
I mean,
Great
you
tips.
guys can please, anyone, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can ping my thing in the chat. It's my first name, Rajat, dot my last name, Dashrath at gmail.com. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Happy to answer any. I know it's a tough time with deadlines coming in the next few months. So I've been there myself. So please feel free to reach out. Happy to help. And Piyush is also an amazing resource. And so please, go ahead, and wishing the very best of luck to everyone. You guys can do this, believe in yourselves. And the sweetness of success once you're past this is worth it, guys. I know, some, like, I've been working full time, studying 3 to 4 hours. Outside of that, barely had any time in the past 3 months to do anything apart from work and studying. It's the summer here in the US, people are having fun, they're vacationing, and I've been stuck on my desk studying. But getting that score, finishing my ISB application this Sunday, the sweetness of that is very amazing, and it's worth all the hard work that you put in. So know
No,
that as
I
well.
remember when I actually requested Rajat for this interview, like that his ISV application was on 15th, just ending last night. We completed it. And he was telling me like he didn't even take the Labor Day off. He was working round the clock just for the GMAT, but he was so candid in coming on board for the interview to help people out because he has been through that journey. So I've shared your email ID. I hope people don't bombard you with a lot of emails, but feel free to reach out to Rajat. I'll also share my details if you, in case you want to get help and you want to be a part of your journey, take you through this. These are our details. You can contact me on my WhatsApp, and please be patient. I get bombarded with a lot of texts, so I'll try my best to reach out to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can always schedule the call on my calendar as well. I'll throw the link as well in the chat. But thank you so much, Rajat, for taking our time
Anytime.
on a busy workday still for all the users. And thank you so much. You have been a real inspiration. I know had we had more time, we could have definitely crossed like 705 or maybe more than that. Also, you had it in you, but yeah, doesn't matter because what we are looking at is our dream B school. We have a good score. We have a strong application. I'm pretty confident that we are gonna make it through. So thank you so much for taking our time today and sharing the amazing thoughts and learnings and lessons with all the users out here. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Piyush. Thank you, and thanks everyone. Best of luck.
Thank you.